are ways of thinking that do not serve both a person and a group. So I do believe that hatred of Jews is having a disabling effect on a large part of the alt-right, that it is simply not an effective means of going about life, because for among many reasons, Jews and the organized Jewish community have about 10,000 times as much power as does the alt-right in the United States of America. So it's not a fair fight. And so there are ways of looking at the world that are really embodied in that famous Richard Spencer audio leak that came out a few months ago, where he starts out with, I am so mad at these people. So there is an insane level of anger among parts of the alt-right that just create antisocial, dysfunctional approaches to life that I think account for its constant failures. Richard then said, they don't do this to me. Well, this attitude that somehow you should be exempt from the normal laws of how human beings interact is, again, this is a way of approaching life that does not work, that guarantees failure. So no matter how brilliant Richard Spencer is, no matter how erudite he is, no matter how eloquent he is, and no matter how right he may be about this or that, he is stuck in a compulsive cycle where he is compelled to participate in his own destruction and the destruction of everybody who associates with him. And until he gets out of this cycle, absolutely everything he touches will turn to manure, because he just can't help destroying himself. He still doesn't see 3.5 years after Hailgate why invoking Sieg Heil is a bad idea in the United States of America. So someone such as a Richard Spencer, the putative leader of the alt-right, who thinks it's a great idea at a conference to use a phrase that's virtually never used in the English language, Hail Victory. It's the English translation of Sieg Heil. Why he doesn't understand why that's a bad idea just shows how insanely self-destructive not just this man is, but much of the alt-right. And so looking at his famous rant, we're going to ritualistically humiliate these people. We're going to come back here to Charlottesville every weekend if we have to. This is never over. I win, they lose. That's how the world works. Well, actually, the world works in the very opposite of the way that Richard Spencer is talking about here. If you dedicate yourself to ritualistically humiliating law enforcement, ritualistically humiliating people who have 10,000 times as much power as you do, that always ends in one way. That ends in your destruction, not other people's destruction. And this idea that you can go around and say, start calling Jews the K word and calling, blacks the N word, and like just hurling out slurs, that may make you and a tiny number of people feel better, but what it does is energize the people who hate you, and when they already have more power, you have amped up their hatred of you 10,000 times compared to the amount of inspiration you've given to your followers. And then to take the perspective, my ancestors enslaved these idiots, I rule the world. Again, this is a way of approaching life that only results in failure, no matter how brilliant you are. Saying these pieces of excrement get ruled by people like me. Again, this is an approach to life that always results in failure, or particularly in the Western world today. They look up and see a face like mine looking down at them. That's how the world works. We're going to destroy this town. So this blind hatred of outgroups and this ease of boasting about how we're going to enslave other people and rule over other people, this is just insanity, and it has infected a great deal of the alt-right.
I agree. I agree entirely with what you just said. But this insanity is definitely pervasive. Some of it pertains to Jews. A lot of it doesn't. I think a lot of people, and to the extent you can even say there still is an alt-right, I think it's fractured into something that's almost, there are no words to describe what it is today because there's no real unity or coherency that you would expect out of a political movement. But I think what a lot of people are who are attracted to the smoldering ashes of what once was the alt-right, a lot of them would probably be, say, Bernie bros, if not for the fact that the modern left is not at all interested in, one might say, the trials and tribulations of white males. I think a lot of people who are attracted to this alt-right, the remains of it at least, a lot of them look for environmental reasons as to why they're not happy with their life, much in the same way that left-wing activists do.
It's very tempting to blame your failures on other people. It's marginalized people who overwhelmingly are attracted to marginalized movements. And so the type of people who are willing to go out on a limb to support something called the alt-right, it's overwhelming that they are going to lack success in the real world. It's overwhelmingly that they will have very little to lose in the real world, or they wouldn't be attracted to a marginalized movement in the first place. So it's people who are failing at life, who are grasping at ways to make their life meaningful, like a Lee Harvey Oswald. He failed, but he had this very strong feeling that he was a great man. And so to get that feeling, he had to kill the president. And so for people on the alt-right, they're convinced often of their own greatness, but they're failing at the real world, and so explanations for why they're failing and other people are winning, explanations that place the blame on an outgroup like Jews, and when theories can be spun that plausibly say the majority of problems in the Western world are the fault of Jews, that's going to be very appealing.